Joe, hi. You were pretty frank in your assessment of Saturday's performance directly after the game. With a more considered view, has that changed, or what is your take on it now?
Look, it's an unacceptable result for us. It was a performance beneath where we'd like to be. It's a performance beneath where we need to be. And I think the whole group are very, very conscious that we have a short period of time to make sure that we accelerate what is part of a progression. We did try to have a very rigorous pre-season, and the pre-season really ran up into the Portugal camp. We tried to taper a little bit at the end of the week, but really we looked flat, we looked slow, we were inaccurate, and we didn't adjust when we could see we were getting trouble in some areas. We didn't adjust and probably take some of the easier options that presented themselves, particularly to retain the ball or win the ball and then retain it. But I think to throw everything out would be a mistake. There were a couple of aspects of play that weren't too bad. I felt that we found a little bit of space in behind them a few times. There were a couple of glimpses of some pretty good structure and getting over the advantage line, and some pretty good defence a few times. We forced them into kicking because we forced them back defensively as well. Now, we didn't do that nearly often enough. We've got a count of 37 missed tackles. For us to be below 80% in a tackle count when we're looking for 90% plus, you can't afford to offer a team the size, skill and experience of England that amount of latitude, and we gave them way too much latitude.
How much of a mitigating factor can the warm weather training camp in Portugal be?
Nothing mitigates losing the way we did. And we're not going to make excuses for that, because we know where we are in our progression, and we've tried to periodise our lead into the World Cup. And I do think at this time of the year, or this time of the cycle, every 4 years, you get some pretty, I wouldn't say bizarre results, but you get some imbalanced results because different teams are in different stages. I think one of the advantages for England is that they've had good clarity. They've named their 31. They know where they are at. It's their third game. For most of our guys who played on Saturday, it's their first game. So I'm determined to stay realistic about where we are in comparison to our opponents last weekend. But where we have to be this weekend is a different story, and where we have to be the weekend after is another different story. And we need to see how much more competitive we can be in the space of a week. And there will be a number of changes for this coming weekend. And I know a number of people will anticipate that being the case, because we are still in what we would determine a building phase, a clarification phase for selection. And, once this weekend is over, effectively, selections are done. And Sunday will be a day of sitting down and making sure we can try to get the selection as well balanced as we can make it, to get the right people to then springboard into that final game against Wales and then onto the World Cup.
Just in terms of the health of the squad, Conor Murray was absent this morning. How is he? And obviously Keane Healy and Jonathan Sexton with the other man who we keen to hear an update on.
Yeah, Conor trained fully this morning.
Oh, I think you're
Yeah, and did all that was required of him. Now, our initial plan for Conor was probably only to play 2 games before we go. So last weekend and potentially the final game of the lead-in. So we'll kind of make a decision on that. He passed his HIA1 at the time. He passed his HIA2 post-match. The following day, he passed his HIA3, which means, according to the protocols, there was no concussion. He did cop an elbow to the side of the face as he came across and dropped into the tackle. just as Johnny May's elbow came up, and so those sort of things happen. But he bounced up and was fine, and he trained fine today. So Johnny, he kind of got put back a bit with that thumb injury, and then was trying to catch up a little bit, and just got a little bit stiff and sore, and so he again is very keen to be involved this weekend. But we're not going to be silly about that. If we don't think he's 100% and he's ready, then he won't be involved this weekend. So we'll make that decision. Ken, funnily enough, I just talked to him on the way out to come up here now, and he's bullish. Again, Ken was involved in the first game and the second game, so he probably wasn't on the radar for this game anyway. We're probably just going to stick with that plan, and he is unlikely to play this Saturday, and will probably play the Saturday after. And I would be gobsmacked if he's not available for that, because really this weekend is potentially something that we could look at with Ken.
What's the latest on Keith Irwin's Joe?
Yeah, Keith, really frustrating for him. He looked super sharp. He got a little bit of, I suppose you'd call it almost tendonitis in the knee, just above the knee, and it's really just kind of niggling away more than anything else. So we've tried to get any inflammation out of that by not pushing him ahead. He's a player who we know plays really well fresh. So again, it's about playing the long game with Keith and making sure that he is 100% ready to go. I know that he'll be ready for the weekend after this one. I doubt whether he'd be involved this weekend.
Joe, does Johnny have a leg injury?
No, he doesn't have a leg injury per se. He's got a bit of stiffness and soreness, but if we wanted to pick him this weekend, we could pick him. Okay, so if you'd seen him out there, how hard he was running today. Down and ups and running, and it's a progression for him, and I think when people don't have full medical information and report things, there's always a risk. He did have what he felt was a discomfort, but when you train, you get a delayed onset muscle soreness, the DOMS, you get a little bit of a feeling of discomfort, and we just didn't want to push through that because he got a bit behind with his thumb, and then he was kind of chasing his tail. We would anticipate that Johnny will definitely play, if not this weekend, next weekend.
Rory was saying after the match that it's probably a matter of focusing harder in training or intensifying training. Is that the key to solving what's going on at the moment?
Well, a lot of the training was around physical conditioning rather than skill and timing and execution, and we weren't accurate enough. And I think he's talking specifically about the set piece. I think he's talking about the line out and making sure that we're not just throwing in and having uncontested line outs, that there's a real contest, that we're forced to adjust what we're doing because the other team are putting real pressure on. And so when they marked up in zones as they did and went off the hooker's throw in the weekend, we should have been able to adjust to that, but we were kind of locked into a little bit of a plan that we just...
Where's the blame lie for that? Is there a blame on that and why you couldn't adjust?
Well, I think, it's ironic that you use a word like blame, because we don't tend to blame. What we tend to do is learn and adjust. And so if you blame, you can look back at it and say, try to sort out whose fault it is, or you can go ahead and you can say, what's the solution? How do we adjust better next time? The first thing you do is you do a bit more line out and you put a bit more pressure on it, because as I said, a lot of what we'd been doing in the pre-season was about physical conditioning, and there were some skills under pressure because that's what you do. But to then get into the specifics of our set piece, we need a bit more time to get the pressure on us in training so that we do adjust better. And that's what our plan is, and hopefully you see evidence of that this Saturday. And if you don't and we don't, then you know, we are going to be under real pressure.
Joel,
Take last one in this section.
Roy Best's performances and whether he should still be captain of the team. What would you say to that?
Yeah, to be honest, if there is external noise of that nature, there's certainly no internal noise of that nature. So probably for Rory, it's that internal noise that is most relevant to him, because that's where the decisions are going to be made. And at this stage, there are no decisions that are being made in that direction. So you're on the back of, there are guys who are going to get an opportunity this weekend, and if they perform better than any other player that played last weekend, then there's always a contest, and you've got to keep that contest live. And I think we've seen that in other teams. You saw an All Black team get beaten 47-26, come out and win 36-0 with a number of changes, where established players were left out and new, fresh players came in and put them under pressure. So, you know, I think players will be conscious of that.